Guys, I've been promising it for a little while. I've finally got the time to sit down and record the top 10 pound for pound global list. Prior to this, I did a top 10 British pound for pound list. I also did several divisional rankings. I've actually created a playlist which is available on the channel's homepage called BG Rankings, so you can check out all of the other ratings if they're of interest there. But without further ado, I'm going to crack on with the top 10 fighters in my current pound for pound list. Let me just lay the ground rules as to how I've rated this. Firstly, pound for pound is based on resume. It's not based on eye test. There are many prospects out there, many contenders out there who've gone 20-0 and have knocked out a whole load of nothing. For pound, we're considering the most strong form in the sport. We're considering victories over elite opposition. So the first thing I look for in terms of establishing the top of the pound for pound list is what wins does this fighter have over other pound for pound top 10 fighters. Beyond that, I'm saying what wins does this fighter have over the recognised top fighter in their division, the recognised top 3 in their division, the recognised top 5 in the division. Potentially, have they been successful in multiple divisions? Have they destroyed highly rated fighters in more than one division? I'm also factoring in losses. Clearly, someone with very good wins and numerous losses falls down the pound for pound list. And finally, if I'm in a position where two fighters have exactly the same kind of resume, that's when I'm considering the method of victory. Has one fighter won by KO? Has another one won by points? But predominantly, the way I'm assessing this is what I believe is the only way to assess a pound for pound list is based on resume and is based on the calibre of opposition who they have wins against. So let's get straight into it, and let's start with number 10, Saul Canelo Alvarez. People don't like Canelo. People think he's got a few gift decisions with the judges. People think he ducked Gennady Golovkin. I can't disagree with either of those things. The fact remains, Canelo, for a relatively young age, has a fairly deep resume already at this point within the sport. Whether you like the method of victory or not, the guy's got wins over the likes of Erislandy Lara. The guy's got wins over the likes of Austin Trout. And I've got to say, now that we're once again considering Canelo as a light middleweight, it would be hard to make an argument that there is an active light middleweight with a stronger resume than Saul Canelo Alvarez. I know people, I understand why certain people question him and maybe aren't the biggest fan of him as a fighter, but nevertheless, real solid wins. Obviously, Miguel Cotto is another one to throw into it, and I think those wins are enough to say to me Canelo has got the strongest resume at 154. He is the number one fighter at 154 currently, and he deserves at number 10 to scrape into the top pound for pound list. At number 9, and this is one that is going to get me a lot of stick. I know it's going to get me a lot of stick, but I've thought long and hard about this. At number 9, I've gone for Vladimir Klitschko. Now, Vladimir Klitschko's resume is one of the strongest active in heavyweight boxing. I am aware he took a loss last time out, and I am aware that multiple people believe that that loss is a sign of him getting old and potentially being in the autumn of his career. But nevertheless, prior to that loss, Vladimir Klitschko had 10 years of dominance. Probably a whole decade where he was considered either the best heavyweight active or the second best. Obviously, there was the situation with his brother also being active and the two of them not fighting. Even recently, even if you wipe out the sort of mega historic stuff on Vlad's resume, even recently, you've got wins over the likes of Alexander Povetkin. And I think Vladimir beat Povetkin in every single round. Kubrat Pulev, who Vladimir Klitschko knocked out. And David Haye. David Haye, obviously a very highly rated fighter, lost convincingly to Vladimir Klitschko. Now, clearly, Klitschko and his loss does drop him down somewhat in the stakes. I'm not going to suggest it doesn't. But prior to that loss, I would have certainly had Klitschko top 3 or 4. And I don't think that a single loss, given that it was a relatively close loss, I don't think it's enough to exit him from the pound for pound list. So I've still got him at number 9. Let me say briefly, and I touched on this in another video, people who say pound for pound list shouldn't include heavyweights, I completely disagree. For me, the whole purpose of pound for pound is to say, if weight wasn't a factor, who's the better fighter? You know, Floyd Mayweather versus Mike Tyson. Obviously, who's going to win in a fight? We know the answer to that. But who's got a better resume at their respective weight class? And I think pound for pound is even more interesting when we do include the big guys. So that's just my take on it. So 10 we've got Canelo, 9 we've got Vladimir Klitschko. At number 8, a fighter who many people consider to be pound for pound number 1 in the sport, but I've got him at number 8. Roman Chocolatito Gonzales. Clearly the number 1 fighter in his division. I understand he's stepping up in weight class, and you know that will certainly get him higher up the list if he's successful. But really, has he beaten anyone of mega note? I know the boxing hardcore will say Estrada is a very serious fighter who he's beaten. And yeah, I take that. That's a fair point. The point is that that weight class that he was in was extremely thin. It's a weight class which, I guess because it's so small and the guys in it are so small and unglamorous, that, you know, we're not really aware of some of the guys in the division. And I just feel that whilst Gonzales is clearly a very good fighter, and whilst he's clearly the dominant fighter in that division, I have yet to see something from him that tells me he's one of the top fighters in the sport. The top fighter in that division, yes. The top fighter in the sport, no. For me, he needs to face names that are regarded as towards the top of the sport. I know the Estrada win is there, but I think a lot of this isn't his fault. You know, I'm not saying that Gonzales needs to step up and fight a welterweight. You know, I'm not being unrealistic. But based on what he's done so far, I personally think it is hard to call him pound for pound number 1. How can you be pound for pound number 1 when the best fighter you've ever beaten, Estrada, is someone who doesn't make anyone's pound for pound list? Just my take on it personally. So Gonzales at number 8. At number 7, another fighter who people consider pound for pound number 1, Gennady Golovkin. You know, like Gonzales, Gennady Golovkin, I would definitely say, is the top fighter in his division. And let me say briefly, it is not Gennady Golovkin's fault that he isn't in the top 10. That he isn't in the top 5. Look, Gennady Golovkin probably had the best intentions. He's probably been ducked horribly. Gennady Golovkin has the talent to be a lot higher. But the fact remains, the best fighters he's beaten are the likes of Daniel Geale, the likes of Martin Murray, the likes of David Lemieux. He's beaten a consistently good level of opponent, but it's very hard to say he's beaten elite opposition. It's very hard to say he's beaten the top guys in his division. Yeah, if you look at the guys who've been active at middleweight whilst Golovkin's been in the division, you've got guys like Sergio Martinez, Miguel Cotto, Canelo Alvarez, Peter Quillen, Danny Jacobs, Billy Joe Saunders. I'm probably forgetting other obvious names as well. Now, let me reiterate it again. It's not Golovkin's fault he hasn't been in with these guys. People have been ducking him. But that's irrelevant in terms of making a pound for pound list. Until Golovkin beats a better level of opposition than he's been beating, it is very hard to rate him at the top of the pound for pound list. How can you have a guy at the top of the pound for pound list who probably has not beaten a top 3 fighter in his division? And before someone comments Daniel Geale was rated number something by the Ring magazine, you know, let's be real. Daniel Geale was coming off a loss against Darren Barker relatively recently. You know, what can I say? Golovkin, excellent fighter, the supreme middleweight, the top of his division. certainly could be a lot higher than 7. But I can't rate him higher than 7 until he's fought and beat the top guys in his weight class. And if that doesn't happen, that may not be his fault, but you can't rate him pound for pound. It's that simple. At number 6, the third guy in a row who people often refer to as pound for pound number 1s. And I realise, as I'm making this video, I'm probably upsetting a lot of people because Gonzales, Triple G and this chap are regularly considered the number 1 pound for pound top fighters in the world, and I've got them at 8, 7 and 6. But at number 6 I've got Guillermo Rigondeaux, and it's for exactly the same logic that I've used for Triple G and Gonzales. The reason I've rated Rigondeaux slightly higher is his win over Nonito Donaire was a win over a guy who was rated in many people's pound for pound lists, and was a win over a guy who many people did consider to be the top or one of the top fighters active in his division at the time. I personally, not that sold on Nonito Donaire, never have been. But regardless, when Rigondeaux fought Donaire, the consensus was that Donaire was a pound for pound level operator. The consensus was Donaire was one of the top fighters in his division. So I'm going to give Rigondeaux credit for that win, and I'm going to include him on the pound for pound list on that basis. He has got one win, which is Nonito Donaire. And the rest of his resume is questionable in terms of elite fighters he's been in with. But I think that the win over Donaire is strong enough to merit his inclusion, and I've got Rigondeaux at number 6. At number 5 in my list, I've got Sergey Kovalev. Sergey Kovalev is one of these who probably hasn't been able to fight the very best fighter in his division, which is Adonis Stevenson. But I feel that he has consistently faced a better level of opposition than guys I've rated below him. So, to give examples, 2 wins over John Pascal. Now, I know some people like Pascal, some people don't like John Pascal. For me, I think John Pascal as a light heavyweight is a better fighter than anyone Golovkin's been in with at middleweight. I also think Bernard Hopkins at light heavyweight, and remember he was a unified champion when Kovalev took him on, is a better fighter than anyone Golovkin's fought at middleweight. Probably a better fighter than anyone Rigondeaux's fought, at his weight class. So I've got Sergey Kovalev at number 5, consistently fighting, the 2 fights with Pascal, Hopkins. Let's not forget when he beat Nathan Cleverly. And I know Nathan Cleverly's career has gone downhill. And it's largely gone downhill because of that Kovalev fight, in my opinion. But when he fought Nathan Cleverly was an unbeaten fighter who many people were rating to be the next Joe Calzaghe. That was a big win at the time. So I've got Sergey Kovalev, the crusher, number 5 in my pound for pound list. So we're into the top 4. At number 4, a guy who is obviously going to get me stick. I get accused of being a fanboy of his left, right and centre, but it's my list, so we're going to go with my selections. And at number 4, Tyson Fury. Let me address the obvious options. Tyson Fury beat the 40-year-old man. Yes. But could you honestly say Vladimir Klitschko wasn't in the pound for pound top 5 when Tyson Fury beat him after 10 years of dominance and wins over Haye, Povetkin and Pulev? I personally couldn't. Tyson Fury has only got 1 win. Well, by that logic, Rigondeaux also couldn't be in the top 10. I've got Tyson Fury higher than Rigondeaux because I think his win over Vladimir Klitschko was actually a bigger win than Nonito Donaire for Guillermo Rigondeaux. And that's just because I rate Klitschko higher than Donaire. Klitschko was so dominant for such a long period of time. And I think Tyson Fury's win over Vladimir Klitschko is one of the strongest single pieces of form available in global boxing at present. Klitschko was so dominant for so long. That form for me is equivalent to someone going out and beating an Andre Ward or a Floyd Mayweather. It's almost at that sort of level. And the fact that Tyson Fury did that, for me, means he cannot be rated any lower than number 4. People will say you're crazy for having him above Golovkin. But Golovkin needs a victory of a similar nature to Tyson Fury's victory. If Golovkin goes out and beat if he'd gone out and beat a Sergio Martinez or a Canelo, you could rate him in the top 5. It's one of those things. It's not his fault he hasn't got those, but until he does, pound for pound is a resume thing. Until he does have a win like that, can't be higher. So I've got Tyson Fury at number 4. At number 3, a new entrant, Terence Crawford. Crawford, multi-division world champion. Wins over Gamboa. Wins over Ricky Burns. Most importantly, a win over Victor Postol. If you take Terence Crawford out of that 140 division, Victor Postol is the number 1 light welterweight. And on my card, Crawford beat him on every single round. If Crawford was still at lightweight, he would definitely be the number 1 lightweight. Now Crawford's at light welterweight, he's definitely the number 1 light welterweight. He's proven himself to be the top fighter in 2 divisions. He's beaten everyone in his path. His resume is increasingly strong. And that win over Victor Postol really is what moves him to me from on the peripheries of the top 10, maybe bottom end of the top 10, to the top 3. I was really, really impressed by that win. And as I say, I think Terence Crawford deserves to be top 3 on the basis that Postol was taking Crawford out of the equation by far the top light welterweight. And I've rated him 1 above Fury just because I think his performance of Postol was roughly similar in terms of value to Fury's performance over Vladimir Klitschko. Maybe Fury's performance over Klitschko slightly stronger because Vladimir had been around for so long. But I've rated Crawford higher based on the fact that he was active in other weight divisions, and I think his other form is slightly stronger than Tyson. So I've got Crawford at number 3. At number 2, Andre Ward, Carl Frotz, Kessler, Chad Dawson, when Chad Dawson was still Chad Dawson. The guy's got one of the strongest resumes in the game. The winner of Ward Kovalev, for me, has a very, very, very strong case to be pound for pound number 1. It's an excellent fight. But, for me, at this stage, I've got to have Andre Ward at number 2. He's unbeaten. I know people are upset about rating him this highly when he's been inactive. But for me, pound for pound doesn't have to be about who you beat in your last fight. It's about who you've beaten over the course and context of your career. And in his more recent fights, Andre Ward has shown that he's still a very capable operator, even if the form isn't as strong as his previous form, which I'd admit it wasn't. And I've got him at number 2. Number 1, Manny Pacquiao. Tim Bradley, Marquez, Margarito, Cotto, Ricky Hatton, Oscar De La Hoya, Barrera, Morales. Manny Pacquiao's last performance against Tim Bradley was pretty exceptional for my money. A real spectacular performance against a guy who I even considered putting in this top 10. The fact that Manny Pacquiao has got a resume of that strength and has proved that he is still a vastly superior fighter to a guy like Tim Bradley in his very last fight, for me means Manny Pacquiao remains the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the sport. And let me say, as far as I'm concerned, there are 2 fights that can decide who that number 1 pound for pound fighter may be moving into 2017. It's Manny Pacquiao versus Terence Crawford. It's Andre Ward versus Sergey Kovalev. A win for a fighter in either of those 2 fights puts them into the debate as being the number 1 pound for pound fighter going forward. But at this stage, based on achievements in ring, based on resume to date, I've got Manny Pacquiao number 1. I've got Andre Ward number 2. For me, the 2 clear strongest resumes currently active in the sport of boxing. I've got Terence Crawford at 3. for dominance in 2 divisions and beating the top fighter very, very easily in his weight class. I've got Tyson Fury number 4 for beating a dominant pound for pound king and proving that he is number 1 in his weight class. I've got Kovalev at number 5 for being the top light heavyweight in the world and for having recorded a very consistently high top 3 level of opposition. I've got Rigondeaux at 6, a good fighter with 1 pound for pound level win, but a very weak resume elsewhere as far as I'm concerned. I've got Golovkin at number 7, the top middleweight, consistent performer, yet to really beat the top guys in his division, yet to beat other pound for pound level fighters, can go a lot higher, not his fault he's not higher, but can't rate him higher than 7th until these fights get made. At 8, Gonzales, again the top fighter in his division, but I believe his division's a bit thin, and I believe he, again, would need to meet more people of note to be considered at the top of the list. Vladimir Klitschko at 9, demoted several places for a bad loss, nevertheless, can't write off his 10 years of dominance and his form just due to 1 loss. Number 10, Canelo Alvarez, a guy that not very many people like at the minute, but a guy with an exceptionally strong resume and some very big wins attached to his name for someone so young in his career. Guys, it's very hard to do these pound for pound lists. If you do a pound for pound list, you're going to upset 90% of people. This is my interpretation. This is the way I rank it. I tried to be completely unbiased. I tried to sit down with a pen and paper and work out based on criteria such as resume, the level of opposition they'd beaten in their division, had they taken on the top guy in their weight class, had they moved up and down and fought top guys in multiple weight classes, etc. But it's very, very hard. I made multiple changes along the way. I keep flip-flopping certain fighters. I want to know your lists. Leave them in the comment sections below. Who are your top 10 pound for pound fighters? Let me know. Let's discuss it. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. I'd really appreciate that. It will help me spread the word about the channel. If you're new, if you haven't checked out my videos before, or if you just haven't pressed subscribe, please do subscribe. It would really help me out at my end. Many thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate you tuning in.